Welcome to WooWoo for the Skeptic, Episode 2. I am your host, Kim Polinder. Join me each week as I explore the world of spirituality and metaphysics. I will be interviewing top experts in the field to give us all a better understanding about these topics. This week's episode will be focused on intuition. We all have a sixth sense, but can we be psychic? I'll be interviewing one of the top intuitives in San Diego, Tonya Spivey. Tonya is also a medium and a channel, and to find out what that means, stay tuned. And thanks for listening. Today's episode is focused on intuition and our ability to connect to energy that is unseen. We all have intuitive gifts to some degree, but for people who label themselves as intuitives or psychics, what sets them apart from others who don't possess the same amped-up powers, so to speak? On today's show, I will be interviewing a real-life psychic. I hesitate to use the term psychic because that label is really rarely used anymore. The term that has replaced it is an intuitive. But before I get to the interview, I want to briefly touch on just the basics of intuition. There are many ways psychic messages come through to people, but intuitive abilities can be broken down into four major types. Clairvoyance is probably the most well-known, and it refers to the ability to see things without using the eyes. Someone who's clairvoyant sees messages visually in their mind's eye, whether it's colors, symbols, visions, or other imagery. The second type is clairsentience, which is the ability to receive messages through feelings, emotions, or physical sensations in the body. People who are clairsentient are also known as empaths. Clairsentient people can feel other people's energy and feelings without the other person saying a word. And the biggest challenge for empaths is determining what your feelings are versus the feelings of others. If you're empathic, you get drained easily in large groups or feel exhausted when you're around people who are angry or depressed, because essentially you've absorbed their energy. The third type of intuition is clairaudience, which is the ability to hear messages without using your ears. Some people can hear actual voices inside of their head, some hear sounds, or others may hear music or tones. And a psychic medium is someone who is clairaudient and can hear words or phrases from non-physical beings, such as people who have passed. And the last major type is claircognizance, which is direct knowing. Claircognizant feelings are intuitive thoughts or ideas that you just know to be true. For example, knowing that you shouldn't get on a bus you're about to board and then hearing that the bus was involved in a crash an hour later. So now that we have a basic understanding of intuition, let's get to the interview with Tonya. I started getting intuitive readings with Tonya about 7 years ago. And when I first decided to try a reading with her, I was hugely skeptical. I figured she would just talk in generalities about things I already knew or things that could apply to anyone. However, it quickly became clear that Tonya was tuned into guidance that was always very specific for me and invaluable in helping me navigate out of situations in which I felt stuck. And the most rewarding thing that I've learned over the years is that with practice, anyone can develop their intuitive gifts. Today, I am highly intuitive, and I've learned to trust the guidance I receive both for myself and the healing work I do with clients. But let's now move on to the interview. First, I'd like to make a comment about the audio quality. This was the first interview I conducted before upgrading my mic filters, so you might find that my vocals on the call are a bit poofy, which I believe is the technical term for it. The sound quality will be much better for future interviews. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Tonya Spivey. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm very excited to introduce my first guest on this podcast, Tonya Spivey. A little more about Tonya is that she is an intuitive life stylist. Tonya assists people to uncover their own mastery by creatively designing their toolbox of life skills through intuitive coaching, theta healing, and spiritual insight. She teaches clients how to harness their own natural gifts and talents, and Tonya connects to their truth and wisdom that lies within through personalized coaching and healing sessions designed for their needs. Her life purpose is to support those walking through their personal growth and expansion. Tonya, hello, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on. Well, let's just get started. Why don't you start off by telling listeners a little bit about your background and how you happen to kind of stumble upon or discover your intuitive gifts.
Okay, so I was a hair lady for many years, hairstylist, grew up in the beauty industry. My mom was also a hairstylist. So that need to be of service is something that I've always had. And I chose the hair profession because of the close connection that you can have with clients as well as the creativity. And the intuitive piece, also, let me backtrack. I've always been an empath, which means that I'm able to feel what other people feel. As a kid, I didn't really understand what that meant. So if I was with friends or in a room where people were crabby and then all of a sudden I absorbed that and was maybe crabby or getting a little sassy with my mom or dad, I didn't really understand what that was as a kid. But then when I moved into the metaphysical field or inquiries even, just like my own research, then I understood, oh my gosh, this is me. I feel like this book was written about me or this article was written about me. So I didn't always have this strong intuition. It was more of the empath and feeling what other people feel. And so in the beauty industry, it was great because I could assist and show up for them wherever they were coming from. If they were looking for a good time, then I would be the party. Or if they just needed to spew and like get stuff off their chest in a safe, non-judgmental place, that was where they would come, as well as making them feel beautiful when they left or good. So the intuitive piece kicked in like mid-90s when I was working on a new client. I'd never worked with her before, and all of a sudden, admiring her ring, I just had a flash across my mind's eye of her a date, and I just blurted out, "Is this your birthday?" And we both were kind of, "What? Where did that come from?" And honestly, I don't actually remember if we were talking about anything woo-woo at all. It was just from her ring. So, like, within a couple weeks of that experience, there was a woman that came to the spa that I was working at to start doing intuitive sessions out of the spa, and she took me under her wing and mentored me through the beginning stages of it, of the intuition and what it's like. And mine started out as being clairvoyant, where I would see images. That's how I saw the birth date run across my screen. It then developed into the clairaudient. And then the clairsentient is where you feel things, which I originally, being an empath, would feel stuff for people, but I didn't really connect with it as that's my intuition. So it can be kind of confusing where you're feeling other people's stuff. Is it that you're feeling it, or is it you're psychic? It's a little combination, I think, of the two, because you're able to read what people are feeling and then to kind of move it forward where the clairsentient, it's like, well, what do you do with this information? What does that mean? That's where it kind of moves into, I think, more of that direction versus just feeling, okay, this person's sad. It's like, okay, I feel they're sad. What do I do with it? And that's where you move into getting that strong intuition. Okay, well, they maybe need this. They need to just be heard, or maybe they just need someone to hold space for them where they're cranky. So that's where the intuition comes into play as an empath, I think.
Okay, and I imagine that, I'm not sure what age you noticed that you were an empath, but I imagine if you were younger, it would be a very confusing thing. So for any clients, any listeners out there who are experiencing these sorts of things where they're having trouble discerning between their emotions or others, or don't even know that it might not even be their own emotions, do you have any advice for them?
You know, it is a tricky thing because, well, especially as kids, like I didn't really know until later in life, oh, that's what was going on. And I don't think that I even consciously at the time recognized, oh, I feel cranky. I'm in this room of crankiness. So it's having conversations about it. You know, if you have a child who you think may be taking on the energy of people around them or the feelings of people around them, have a conversation about that and question them when they get upset if maybe you're feeling crabby or stressed and then they start to be sassy or act up. Questioning them, like, what is this? Why are you feeling this way? Just more for them to be in that place of conscious awareness of what they're feeling. And then the way to kind of, and even for adults, it is check in with yourself. Am I really crabby? Or is it because I was just at the post office and the whole line of people were irritated because it was taking a long time to get through? Like you leave and all of a sudden, like an hour later, you're just cranky. So just paying attention to the environment that you're in and checking in. Is it me? Or, you know, maybe was I around people that were cranky? Typically, if you have that sense of just kind of knowing how to react to someone, that then you're probably an empath. Like if you're meeting people and you start to kind of be this chameleon and act accordingly, you probably have some of that empathic ability or sense about you. So that's also one way, like if you just kind of think about who you are and when you connect with people, if they just like you automatically and you notice, oh, I'm this way with this person and this way with this person, that's kind of a helpful way to discern, am I moving into their energy or am I just, is this me?
Yeah, that's really great guidance. And I hear from adults and from parents of children where they, you know, intuition comes in different forms. Like you said, you can be clairaudient and hear things, you can see things. And so for some parents where their child is starting to hear things or, you know, adult is starting to hear things and they think they're starting to go crazy, just to understand that you might be tuned in to the other side, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And it is, I have a lot of parents that have come to me and said, I don't know what to do with this. And they come from, I found it's really confusing for those parents that come from a religious background, and it's hard to step out of their religious foundation and to just go with the flow of what's happening with their child.
Yeah, because it's their child. They know their child wouldn't be lying or wouldn't be like a snake oil salesman, like, you know, someone you might see on TV trying to earn a quick buck. So do you have any advice for, say, religious people who do fear guidance? Like I grew up in a very conservative religious household, and, you know, anything like related to tarot cards or quote unquote psychics, were all taught to be from the devil. So if someone is experiencing this in their home with their children, what advice do you have for them?
You know, it is really tricky with that strong religious understanding because your beliefs are so strong with what you've been taught, but then, yeah, you can't deny what's happening. You have to trust your own feelings, like your own heart around it, because you clearly know you don't have a devil child. And seeking it's interesting, I'm just being shown this flexibility that spirituality can have versus the confinement of religion. So, meaning, like, try to be a little flexible with, well, where is this coming from? And, you know, is it in the highest and best place in your heart? Like, because if religion is telling you it's not, but you see your sweet child's face, and maybe they're even scared too because they're hearing these things, or it can be a natural thing where it's like an imaginary friend, or an imaginary person, or even I've heard like where kids will say, well, grandma told me such and such, and their grandmother has passed away. There's no denying it, and religion has nothing to do with it in that case. Like there's obviously no logic or analytical way of looking at it because it just is. So if your heart is like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing thing, how did he or she know that? That's when you know it's truth.
Yeah, and so like, let's just say for intuitive readings. Now, I've had intuitive readings with you for many, many years. And how would you kind of explain an intuitive reading for the listeners out there who have never even had one? Like, who are you hearing or who are you talking to during a reading?
Great question. So it varies depending on the person, and kind of dipping back into the religious place. I've had clients who grew up in a Catholic foundation or a home or Christian, and so their beliefs are strong in certain like spiritual guides or, God or Jesus or different saints. And so the interesting thing is, and it's not every time with someone that is coming to me that has a strong religious background, but I'll see the saints or the strong influence in their life coming to deliver the message or a healing. I see Jesus a lot. I see Mother Mary. I see Buddha. I've seen Ganesh. Obviously the archangels, a ton. And so it really is dependent on who's showing up for them. It's not my guides that I get the information from. It's my clients' guides that are assisting them. And sometimes it's loved ones that have passed on, even if they're not coming for what's called a medium session, which is where you connect to loved ones that have passed on. It's the loved one is just showing up to say, here I am, I'm here protecting you, I love you, or I made it across safe and sound with lots of peace and love. So it really is dependent. And I always start all of my sessions with a strong intention of only the highest and best information can come through, and connection, the highest and best connection. So, for those that may be scared that it's like, dark energy can come through or anything like that, I have such a strong intention and, maybe you can call it like a protective barrier around my sessions, because I feel like it is so important to get the highest and best information for my clients and who I'm working with.
And you talk about the concept of guides, and I'm sure people have heard that word used a lot. Can you explain a little bit about what a guide is? And does everyone have them?
Yes. So, from my experience and what I've seen in all the sessions that I've done, guides is really a vast thing. So I've seen guardian angels that are assigned to us at birth. They're with us all the time. I've seen guides that are working with us specifically on certain things. So for example, it could be someone who has passed away, but their work was, so like I have this client that is a scientist and she's doing this research. And so I'm seeing these research docs coming in to assist her with these numbers and formulas. And so it's, somebody that has lived before and kind of pioneered the work that she's working on. And so they come in to assist. But then also it could be ascended masters or another guide or spirit that is connected also to the work that they're doing and may not have like been a famous researcher or doctor or academic leader, whatever. It's just someone that's their focus, but they're sort of, I'm being shown it's like higher than maybe someone that has actually lived, but that's their gift, if you will, or their focused work that they're supposed to do to help us on this side move and grow.
Okay, so the way you're describing it, it sounds like you are a messenger, kind of like a conduit. And so what I hear from a lot of people when it comes to working with intuitives is that they place a lot of responsibility of what they're hearing on the intuitive shoulder. Like if I'm receiving news that I don't like, then I'm blaming you or getting mad at you when really you're just the messenger. How do you talk to me a little bit about how your inner dialogue works as far as when you hear a message that you're supposed to tell the client, but you know they're not going to like it, or when a client comes back to you with, hey, I followed your advice, you told me to do this, and look what happened. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, so it is a slippery slope being the messenger in some ways because, some people do want this relationship to work out, and I may see that it isn't going to work out. And having to share that information can be difficult, and people get upset when they don't want to hear something that they were wanting it to be another way. So a couple things. I didn't really understand early on this concept of how the information and truly just being a messenger. It was hard for me because I had to learn to get that thick skin of understanding I'm just delivering and not everybody's going to like it. And it's not always 100%, and I'm such a perfectionist. So when that 100% didn't come through, it triggered my own insecurities or my own questions about what I was delivering and how I was delivering. So the beautiful thing is early on, when it was triggering my perfectionism, I dug deeper into how to do this, how to refine, how do I get the clearest, like what's my path on this, or what's the clearest way to get my messages. And then the other piece that comes in is recognizing that sometimes someone needs to hear the opposite of what they want, so they fight harder for it, or they have to look within themselves for their own answers. If they're constantly seeking outside of themselves for validation of something they truly know is not aligned, or maybe they do need to work harder on something to make it, like I'm being shown puzzle pieces, to make it fit, then I am shown the opposite of what they need to do. Like I had a client who was asking me about hiring this SEO company and what I felt about him. And my human side was like, well, and even intuitively, I got that he's not good. It didn't feel good, but I kept getting this yes, 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 you need to walk forward with this. And I even said to her, he feels a little shady, but I keep getting this strong yes to move forward. And she in her heart also felt she shouldn't do it, but because it came so strong with yes, she did. And it turned out that he didn't do a good job, and she lost like $2,000. That happens. And same, I have a client with a relationship situation where I was shown, this isn't a good fit because of this, and this. And she didn't like that. And so she went and worked on and had, communicated to her partner what this, and this, let's work on this, and this. And they're still together today. And I'm sure some people are like, well, why am I even coming to you? Which I've gotten that too. Like, well, what's the point? But also, so with that same client that the SEO situation happened, there has also been a ton of information that did come through. It's like you have to question your own intuition and your own inner voice. And if you're looking for validation against that, that's typically when it's like you may have a lesson to learn around listen to your own gut feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it just goes to the notion that I personally believe we're not here on earth to sit on the side of a hill and sing Kumbaya all day. We're here to learn the nitty gritty, to learn the lessons, and they can be joyful lessons, they can be hard lessons. But I really appreciated in one of your interviews for a summit that you did recently, you had said that the guidance you get is the guidance you get. Now, whether that means for the other person that, it's going to be, all roses, rainbows, and unicorns or not is kind of what you just explained, that, people are here to learn lessons and maybe they need to learn it a certain way, or they're just not getting the message, so they're going to have to learn it a different way. And so, take dating, for example. All the times that I asked you about relationships and, is this person right, or what's going on with us, you always gave it to me straight. And I also appreciate over the years your integrity, because when you weren't getting that 100% clear message, you told me, like, I'm not getting a clear yes or no on that or whatnot. So when I look at the advice you gave me for relationships, I have zero regrets about anyone I've ever dated. We came together for certain reasons. And the lessons were there and they were learned. And so it's not about you setting people up for a path of, hey, what's the least painful way I can get through this life? It's what's the most I can get out of this life.
That is awesome. So well said. So
yeah.
Said. Yes, it is that way. And it's hard for us. Like, even like when you're in the state of emotion around it, sometimes it is difficult to hear what you don't want to hear. And so it stings. But really, truly, no matter who you get a session from, understand that they truly are the messenger. And the more that you're open to hear whatever versus I really am looking for this, you're going to get such a better reading, because you are just open and fluid to hear whatever versus, okay, I need to know this color on this day of this thing. Like, it just doesn't always work that way. I've found also with sessions where people are really in that stuck place, but they're not really digging around to find the answers. I get the blank screen because they actually need to do some digging themselves. They need to do their own meditation or journaling or read some, personal development type books, or just have their own growth versus just coming to an intuitive, okay, tell me what I need to do because I'm feeling stuck.
So it sounds like a person's motivations for coming to you are really going to color what they get out of a session with you.
Yes. Yes.
And so for example, like, how much does a client's skepticism about your gifts and, intuitives, like, what are they really tuned in? Like, how much does that affect your ability to connect?
It definitely puts up a bit of a smokescreen, per se. Obviously, if it's a good match for the client and I move through the skepticism, but sometimes it really isn't a match. And so it's like the smokescreen all the way. And, in those cases, I will say, I'm just not getting anything. I think I'm just not your messenger. And so I'll stop a session, or I leave it open in the beginning of the session with a client. Like, if you're not feeling it, please say so, because it's a waste of both of our time. If it's not ringing true to you, then I'm not your girl.
Yeah, that is a good way to go about it. Like, if they're just going to come in, fold their arms and say, okay, prove yourself to me, then that is a kind of a waste of both of your time.
Yeah.
So.
I always call it dance monkey. Like, I had a dance monkey client today. Because that's what it feels like on the other side. Like, it's like really pulling teeth. And, and sometimes we are stuck in our, like, stuff. And so I found that when it's not ringing true to them in the moment, if they can just, like, take a deep breath and then reflect on what came through in a session, then it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. Now I get what you mean. Like, they may have been taking it so literal in a session, but then they go home and reflect, and it's like, oh, no, okay, I get it now. So being open from start to finish, even if it's, obviously if it's completely not ringing true, I'm not the person. But if it's like, okay, I can kind of see, but it's not totally making sense, that too is something you want to give it a chance in reflection.
Yeah, and I will say, personally speaking, that I came from a very skeptical point of view with my, engineering background and my left brain approach to life. And so with you being my hairstylist, it kind of got you in the door to a conversation like that about talking about intuition and, hey, let's do a reading and see what happens. And so, my window of openness was small to begin with, but as I followed the advice and things fell into place, that openness really opened up. So.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. So for people that are, that may be a hardcore skeptic, start following someone maybe on Facebook or watching their YouTube videos, or kind of see if the way they, like some of the information they give, feels right to you if you're really not sure. Because then you'll feel it in your heart, or you'll just kind of know, I'm not really into them, or, what they're saying kind of makes sense, so I guess I'll try it.
Mm-hmm. And that just speaks to the fact that we all have our own intuition to begin with, and learning to tune into, what speaks to us and what our gut is telling us will definitely open up new opportunities.
Yes, definitely.
So can you talk a little bit more about that, intuition in general? Can anyone open up their intuitive connection, or is what you have just what you're born with and that's it?
No, it's definitely a muscle, and it's no different than going to the gym. You need to exercise it, and it can be done in really fun ways. It doesn't have to be so rigid. Like when I started trying to exercise it more, I would do games like where I would put cards or pictures in an envelope, like playing cards, and mix them all up and try to guess what it was, like feel it out just to see or hear or sense what it could be. And for me at that time, it was super frustrating because I wasn't getting it as fast as I wanted it or having the numbers. So for those of you that are maybe a perfectionist or a little more A personality, doing those kind of games almost makes you criticize and shrink the muscle more. But those of you that are like, who cares? Do it. Like we play that game with my kids all the time to help strengthen, because it just like gets them in that space of like, well, I got to see it or feel it, like so that they're knowing the road to go down. So if you can look at it from that perspective of what it's like to kind of open the door versus getting the door fully open and you see everything in the room. If you can come from that approach with those kind of exercises, then it's just like strengthening that hinge, or maybe greasing the hinge of the door, if you will. So that's a fun exercise if you're not super rigid and judgy on yourself. But just checking in with food, or which way to go home from work or from the grocery store, if you have a couple ways, like, okay, what would be the best? Just asking yourself, like, and whatever comes in the first 3 seconds, that's the way you want to take. Don't question it, even if it's a little bit longer, or typically in that traffic, it takes that much time, like longer. Don't ask if you're not going to listen. Like that's number one rule. Don't bother asking, because that's like telling your intuition, okay, tell me, but I'm not going to listen. So it's going to like, think about if a friend is asking your opinion time and time again, and then they're doing the opposite, it feels kind of like, oh, well, I guess you don't really care. So it sort of shrinks that muscle. But yeah, play with food. Like, should I have steamed veggies or should I have a salad today? Just to see what comes up, play with it. It's really, the more you can be playful and fun around it, then it's easier to exercise it. It's like, for some people, going to the gym sucks because it's not fun. So, but if they're going to go play water polo or beach volleyball or softball with their buddies from the bar, then it's fun and they're still getting exercise.
Yeah, that's great advice. People get intuition in different ways. Like, for example, how do you get a yes or no answer in your body, or what do you see? Yeah,
so I really focused on strengthening the muscle where my body physical sensations would come through for yes and no. That was really important for me. Some people don't care. Some people can use other sources of getting their yeses and nos, like a pendulum or muscle testing. But for me, I wanted to feel it in my body so that no matter where I was, no matter what state I was in, I could get my yes, no. So for me, I felt it I feel yeses in my heart area. Like it's kind of like a butterfly feel or almost like a tingling. Typically I'll get chills up and down my spine or up and down my arms. And that's like a hardcore yes when I get that one. But if it's just a yes, then it's in my chest, and no is more down in the pit of my stomach. It feels heavy. It's hard. Or sometimes it's even, a butterfly. No, like it's not hardcore. And then I have a sensation in the middle where I call it my yes, but. So that is like, yes, but maybe you need to look at this a little bit more. Otherwise it's a no. And that just took time of me, again, asking questions all the time. I probably tune into my intuition 100 times a day outside of my clients. And it's something, again, like, because I want my daughters to have really strong intuition. It's like if we're at a store and they can't decide between this skirt or this shirt and they have they're only getting one thing, they have to decide. And so I say, ask your body. And then they check in, okay, but I really want, it's fun to watch them, see them like, but I really want this one, but my body says this. Again, it's a playful thing and it takes time and practice. It's, like I'm being shown a pianist, like the masters still practice in their height of mastery. They still have to practice.
So when you're talking about the physical body, then how much do things like diet, lifestyle, and so forth affect the ability to feel intuition in the body?
Hydration is huge. I notice like if I'm dehydrated, the impulse or the sensation is not as strong. Hydration across the board is so important. I've seen people that eat like crap and still super intuitive. I used to have a friend that was a hardcore smoker, and she said for her, smoking grounded her, and she's super intuitive. And so she would like go into her meditative state. She was a channel, and she gave really great, just intuitive sessions, all of the beautiful gifts. But for her to get kind of back into her daily life, she said she had to smoke. And in my head, I was like, I think that's just an excuse. But, that's what worked for her. Like, who am I to judge? Like, well, smoking helped her. And then Sylvia Brown, who is, that famous medium intuitive, she was a hardcore smoker. So, it's your own, whatever works for you to make you feel the best. My belief is the better, you treat your temple, the better it's going to work for you. But also there's a lot of people that their gifts have come through. Like a lot of people have that story of their intuition kicked in after an illness. Like mine, my medium gifts kind of fell in my lap when I was really ill with an autoimmune disease. And so I was, frail. My body was shot. But the gift just was rampant. It's like it just came without even me having control of it. So yeah, as much as I would love to see everybody eating clean and hydrating and say that that's the ticket, it's really what's for you, what works for you to make you feel the best.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, we're starting to come to a close here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I wanted to switch gears for a minute. And I'm asking a few questions of all of my guests so that listeners can get to know a more personal side of you. Yeah. So the first question is, if they made a movie of your life, what would it be about, and what actor would you want to play you?
Oh, my gosh. That, the first thing that came to mind, the title would be Crazyland. And then the first actor that came to mind would be Kristen Wiig, because she's so silly. And I think,
oh, that is a good match for you. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, because I definitely can be serious and when it comes to my sessions and my work, I'm very passionate, but there's also this silliness to it and playful. And, my kids are always saying what a weirdo I am. So crazy land it is.
I love that title. All right. So, So the second question is, what was the worst thing you got in trouble for with your parents growing up?
First thing that comes to mind is when I wrote cuss words on a brick where we lined up in second grade. Like, we had to line up before we'd go in the classroom. And I think it was after school. Sometime, obviously nobody was around. I wrote all these cuss words and then signed it a boy that I was mad at. And I put signed Eddie. So
wow, framed him.
Clearly he didn't write all those cuss words. But, I got in big trouble for that. And I think I even, got myself in trouble by saying, oh, who wrote this? What? Eddie? I kind of vaguely remember that, but yeah.
And then lastly, what are the top 3 things on your bucket list?
Oh my gosh, top 3, that's hard. I don't have a specific location, and maybe it's a tour of visiting all the sacred places in the world to just feel the energy of this space and to see if I can connect deeper to the spiritual side of where they are and more outside of the U.S. I've touched on some here in the U.S., but I want to visit India and Jerusalem and also go on a little tour. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I can't really.
Well, the traveling would take up a lot of time, so maybe you should.
Yep, I'll stick with that. That's my top 3, 3 big spots.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for dedicating your time today. And I know that your intuitive work is just a piece of what you do. I know you transitioned into coaching. And so if listeners want to contact you to schedule a reading or set up a coaching arrangement, how can they find you?
They can come to my website, which is souldynamite.com. And click on my link, and it kind of gives some of my backstory, and it talks about what intuitive sessions are, what healing sessions are, what medium sessions are. And we also have an education page. So if you're not quite sure, if you're not quite connected, but you want to start doing some work, we have some self-paced programs on there to get the party started.
Perfect. Yeah. So people can start to develop their own intuition.
Yes, including, there's one called Unmute Your Inner Voice, which is dedicated strictly to opening up those channels, tips and tricks, and all the foundation of how to get connected to your own intuition.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks very much. I wish you the best in your intuitive coaching and everything else that you are embarking upon.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
On July 7th of this year, Collective Evolution published an article about magnetoreception, which refers to the ability to see magnetic fields. Many animals have a magnetic compass, which allows them to find their way over long distances by aligning themselves with the Earth's magnetic field. The article referenced a recent study by Joe Kirschvink, the geophysicist at the California Institute of Technology. Kirschvink's study suggests that a protein in the human retina has the ability to detect magnetic fields. This type of research is paving the way for more scientific studies dedicated to researching how we are all energetically connected with each other and this planet. If humans have the ability to affect the global energetic field and all living systems, then our collective human consciousness has the ability to initiate great change. This also begs the question, what type of energy do you want to put out in the world? Thank you for tuning in to WooWoo for the Skeptic. For more on the show, visit woowoofortheskeptic.com, or for more on me, check out my website, kimpolinder.com. And now for your moment of woo. This quote comes from the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. If prayer is you talking to God, then intuition is God talking to you. Have a great week, everyone.